Welcome to Long Term. I'm Ty King, and this podcast where we've been talking about recovery and the many different forms that it comes in, and finding out that, I think all of us have something that we need to recover from in the first place. If you've ever lived any amount of time on this planet Earth, which is all of us, if you're listening to this, you've got something to recover from. And so, how you seek recovery is just as important about what is the thing that you need a recovery from, right? And there's not a one size fits all, and there's something that has to be customized for you. But I'm always glad to talk to the experts that have experience in these fields, especially therapists who know how the mind works. They've worked with other clients and they can tell how to work with someone subjectively, an approach that works for you. And so I'm excited to, to talk to people like I have today. So Chris Cummins, I'm so happy to have connected with you and to get you on the show to help share your expertise.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So Chris, we were talking before the show a little bit about your expertise and your background. And so you're the chief operating officer of Laguna Treatment Center,
That's right.
and you're a licensed marriage and family therapist, licensed clinical alcohol and drug counselor, approved clinical supervisors. You have got all those letters after your name that
All the
I
bells and whistles.
yes,
Yeah.
the full alphabet right behind your name.
Yeah.
So obviously you know what you're talking about when it comes to a lot of these different subjects that we're already covering. So I appreciate you taking your time out to be able to share your expertise and your time with us.
I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely, man. So let's get started. So first of all, so where's Laguna Treatment Center?
So we're in Aliso Viejo. It's the bottom of Orange County. South County is what we call it, near
Yeah,
Laguna Beach.
great, perfect. And you told me earlier that you knew David Marley because that was your old boss, who's a previous guest of the show who runs Vegas Stronger.
Yeah, I love Dave. Yeah, he's the best. Yeah.
Very energetic, very impassioned about the field of recovery.
Yeah, and just like he talks on the podcast
Yeah.
is him in real life. Passion and his charisma and everything that comes off. If we're just having a normal conversation, that's Dave. He's a good dude.
That's always the best, the most authentic people that you can meet when they're
Hmm.
same on the microphone and off.
He's authentic.
So, Chris, where does the interest for you come in? I know with Dave, he's got lived experience. Was that something that you fell into, or was this a path that you fell into a different way?
Yeah, but both. So it's really interesting. I have my own personal lived experience, and then I have the educational path that led me here. And I could tell you both sides of it. So
Yeah, please.
the really interesting part about what was happening in my life is I went to 13 different schools in Las Vegas. So my mom was an apartment manager. She had to live on site wherever she was managing. So I moved from school to school. The only time that I had a solid group of friends was the friends that was outside of school. And those friends were the ones that I met at a casino. We drank together, we did drugs together, we committed crimes together, whatever you could think of. And the whole idea behind that was I needed a connection. I needed a solid group of friends. And I just started in a bad way. At 11, that was one of my hardest days of drinking, ironically. When I was 11, I started taking shots before school. I remember getting up to 8 shots before going to my middle school, and then by the time I got to school, I'd have friends there that would have more drugs, more alcohol waiting for me, and the part that made it worse for me was that I was charismatic and I was adaptable. So, for me to get my way, I would use my personality to work with the teachers, to work with the dean, whoever I was talking to, and eventually I would say, I'd be doing whatever I wanted to. I'd be drinking in class, I'd be getting in late because I could use my personality and relate to the teacher. Sometimes I'd talk to them after class and just shoot the breeze with them. And eventually, what that led me to find, reflecting back on it, was even though at the time I thought it was a strength, I really needed help. I needed someone to say no. I needed someone to be a united front. If my dean was talking to my teacher, if anyone was talking to each other among the school and they were say, Chris, we care about you. We need you to stop. It could have stopped at that moment. There's some personal responsibility in it too, of course, but what I know reflecting back is I needed a better system. So going off into college, it continued, and eventually it became I was in a fraternity, and the old friends that were outside of school, I evolved into this new fraternity, and I was the drunk frat boy. I was the one that was kinda, like, ostracized. It became to the point that I became too much of a problem, and luckily, they became a system, and they were like, this is just no good," and it wasn't a good fit, and it didn't work out, and it was for the best because I was becoming a drug and alcohol counselor. I was going down this path, and at the time, I was fighting all these demons. So, that's the personal path. And then on my educational path, I wanted to be a teacher. And eventually it came to the point when I was deciding on my career path, I'd become a counselor because this is what I appreciate what we're doing right now. This conversation, just a one to one and something I valued highly just to be able to relate and connect. So this is the path that I chose to go down. And my path went back to my passion for systems. I want to run a program where I can create a united front and stop the people from getting to the point that I got to.
Well, that's pretty incredible, and completely different story. So, like, the dichotomy of like you were going to school as a student, high and getting more drugs and using your personality to to relate to the teachers and distract them, and then you ended up going to school
Yeah.
and to later on and using it for the opposite to try to deter people from doing the things you were doing as a student.
It was so wild. It's
Yeah,
like I'm becoming the person that I needed at the
yeah,
time. I'm becoming that person, which I really appreciate because there's so much that I've learned along the way that's just a note in my mind of, "Wow, that's great." And there's something
yeah.
I learned about ACEs. Have you heard of ACEs?
What is that?
So ACEs are adverse childhood experiences, and it's basically a set of questions. I think there's 10 questions and it scores you. And based on your score, they can predict what happens in your future, like health issues, mental health issues, addiction. There's a strong correlation between ACEs and these health outcomes. So that's bad news. There's a study that comes out that says, hey, you're pretty much predetermined to be in bad shape when you're older. But I was talking with a mentor when all of this information came out, and the antidote to that is finding someone and connecting with someone that is non-judgmental, that just accepts you as you are, that you can connect with. So again, that was another click in my mind of if I can just be a part of that system that helps one person connect to the other and nullifies those ACEs scores to a certain degree,
Yeah.
then I know I'm on the right track. So a lot of good things, just notches along the way that are like I'm doing exactly what I'm meant to do.
I love that what you just said about you're being the person that you needed at the time,
Yeah.
and now it's good that you are aware of your personality traits that you could use, and they can be used as a weapon, but they could also be used as a tool for good, right? So it seems like I always tell people all the time, it's like whenever they switch jobs, like, well, I had employment as this for so many years, but now I'm doing something completely different. But I'm like, yeah, but you're using all those skills that you learned throughout there and you're applying them to this, which makes a completely unique sort of set of skills for yourself to be able to offer. And so I'm sure you're doing that now as a therapist, using that charismatic personality, like you were saying that you have, it makes it easier for people to open up and relate to you.
Yeah, transferable skills are enormous. That's what I look for even when I'm hiring a therapist. I'll go through their resume and I'll say, "Great, you worked at this treatment center. Awesome, you have a great history." And then I see a little line at the bottom that says they worked at Starbucks. And I go, "Tell me about that."
Yeah.
Because that's when you get to the real clues of this person knows customer service, they know how to meet someone's needs, they know how to deal in a high stress environment, make quick decisions. There's a lot that you can pull from someone that hasn't been in the field, sometimes more than you can pull from even when they've been in the field and have a long history of this kind of work.
Yeah.
Huge fan of transferable skills.
Absolutely. So the area that you're moving it, because you were living in Vegas, for quite a while, and you said 12 different schools you were switching around in, which I didn't realize there were even that many schools in Vegas.
So many schools. Yeah. I've been to almost all of them.
I mean, I would imagine so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, how did you end up in Laguna area where you're starting this treatment facility?
So I was born and raised out in Vegas. By the time it got to my master's degree, when I decided to get my master's in marriage and family therapy, I needed to work at the same time because I didn't want to take out student loans. So I looked into different programs, and there was a program in Colorado called Regis, and all of their classes were either after hours between 6 and 9, or they were on the weekends. And I said, perfect. I'm going to work full time. I'm going to go to school. No need to worry about student loans. And my wife has family back in Colorado, so it's perfect. We get to be close to family. I get to do education at the same time as working. So we did that out in Colorado. And funny enough, when we were driving out there to Colorado from Vegas, both of us kind of like face palm situation. We're like, we're going the wrong way. We wanted to head towards the beach.
Yeah,
We got married in Huntington Beach in 2016, and that's where we've always wanted to be, but it was so expensive. And eventually, we moved back to Las Vegas after I got master's, got my license, got some experience out there, and I got the offer for a job out here in Southern California. So we pulled the trigger on it and eventually came out here to work at Laguna, which is great because the program that I was running in Las Vegas was a giant program, 181 beds, all in one building. And Laguna is one of the only programs that's similar to that in Southern California. So it was meant to be.
that's great. But what are the major differences that you see? Anything that stands out in the area that you're in as far as with the people that you're dealing with? Are there any, specialized sort of addiction issues that you face out there?
One big thing that I wasn't prepared for is the level of saturation of treatment centers. So from here, I could throw a rock and hit 3 treatment centers.
Really?
Oh, yeah, and then if I go to Newport Beach, I throw a rock and hit 10 more treatment centers. If I go to Costa Mesa, throw a rock and hit 10 more treatment centers. It's everywhere, and the dynamic for that is there are treatment centers that pop up, and there are treatment centers that die off. There are treatment centers that get new contracts. There are treatment centers that die off. There are players in the game that aren't working ethically, so body brokering and doing things that are unethical. So just being prepared for that and reading it and having a very low tolerance for anything that's dirty. Don't want to be associated with that. We're an ethical program treating patients and changing lives. So that's something that's different out here. Out in Las Vegas, for the most part, the people that are coming through the treatment program, they're looking for treatment. Or even in Dave Marlin's situation where he's working with the homeless population, even if they're coming in and they're just saying, I just need a bed to sleep in, that's the model. That's a part of addiction. Perfect. That's our foot in the door. You need a bed to stay in, and at the same time, for this, we're providing treatment. That was the power of Vegas stronger when we were there. So people come in and they don't know that they're struggling with an addiction or that they have an addiction problem, but they don't need to. That's our job as clinicians to eventually bring them there and help them through the process.
That's incredible. So what keeps you, because dealing with these issues, it's kind of heavy, right? And so dealing with people's issues and like they go through, I've heard lots of stories about addiction and things that happened in it, and a lot of it is a lot of trauma that they experience while they're in addiction, and then they're sort of just landing on you as a counselor, right? What keeps you sort of keep going and impassioned about doing this?
It's that every day that happens here is my passion for it. It's the day to day. It's waking up and coming here. And for me on the back end, since I'm not seeing patients on the forefront every single day like my team is, it's seeing my team's passion for the work. They care so much about the patients. They go above and beyond. They're working after hours. They're doing everything that's necessary to get things done, and their heart is in the work. And it's the therapists, it's the nurses, it's the doctors, it's the treatment advocates, it's everyone that works here from the top to the bottom. You can tell that they have a passion for it, and just being able to witness the care and compassion for our population is something that keeps me going every day. Just as a byproduct, seeing what happens and hearing the stories. So we measure success with customer service surveys, with Google reviews, with hearing back from our patients that say, I'm a year sober now, and it's all thanks to what I learned in the program and the investment that I put in it and being involved with the alumni group. And we get text messages from them that are graduated and moved on and doing whatever they're doing, and they say, "Hey, you guys are incredible. I can't wait to come back. I want to do a panel with you." So that keeps it going every day. And you know, being with my personal history, I'm also a little bit of a fan of the chaos. So when there are issues that happen, I get to be at the forefront. I get to be face to face with the things that are happening, like the people that were like myself, the ones that have this personality, that are going above and beyond, that are probably breaking rules and shouldn't be here. And then they get a face to face with me, and I get to call them out to the floor about what exactly is happening and be that united front. Hey, this isn't happening here because I care about you. And not because I'm punitive, not because I'm trying to punish you, but because I care about you and I want to see this work. So that's what keeps me going every day.
Yeah, for sure. And for those that might not, be familiar with why, counseling is so important on that road to recovery, because we hear a lot about, peer recovery specialists. We hear about, clinical and clinicians and medications that could potentially take and stuff. Why is it that counseling and mental health are so important for recovery?
They go hand in hand strongly, the medications and the clinical component. I was talking with a friend recently and they said, I just need this medication. This medication is going to make it all better. And everything that's happened in my history, or everything that's happened in my past, and the things that I'm struggling with right now, I know this medication. And if I get this medication, I'm going to be all right. My recommendation was counseling needs to come with it. You have to try that out. You have to move with the mental health medication, with the mental health treatment. Otherwise, it's bound to be an addiction. So, for example, like a benzodiazepine, something that's anti-anxiety. If I'm taking that just to get rid of something that I'm experiencing in this moment, it can become extremely addictive if I don't address the underlying issue. If I don't address the things that are causing my anxiety, if I don't address the things that led to the anxiety in the first place, then I'm going to take that and expect to keep taking it. The root cause hasn't been addressed. So that's why it's so important for them to go hand in hand, is because a lot of the times one method alone, like counseling alone, might not be able to address it because there's a biological component where your anxiety is so advanced and so intense that you can't even be productive on a regular day, going to work, operating with friends, being able to talk to your supports, because that anxiety is so high that it gets in the way. That's when a lot of the times you need a biological factor, bring in the medication to assist with the mental health component. So both of those work hand in hand. Did that answer your question? I know it was really like, what's the impact?
No, absolutely. Yes. You hit right on the head what I was looking for. Um, because I was having a conversation yesterday about, they were heavily focused on the medications that somebody could take, but, and how it helps you, live every day without needing that certain thing that you thought that you had to live with. And I was like, yeah, but there's also a decision making process in that, right? And so that's where your mental health comes in, and having that fortified mindset of, it's people in recovery that I really, really respect, because they get up every single day and make a decision. Okay, today I might be better than I was yesterday, and I don't think the general, the average person thinks about those types of things. It's like, yes, we want that, but do we actively seek it every single day? And for people in recovery, they know what's at stake and what can happen if they slip,
Oh, yeah.
right? So it's very incredible.
Yeah, it's like
Uh,
complacency. If you're not thinking about it, if you're not progressing, then you're regressing. You're getting closer to it. So yeah, I completely agree with that mindset.
exactly.
There's not just a one fix for it.
Absolutely. With so many of those, treatment centers like you were talking about, that pop up all over the place in that area they're in. Uh, how do people typically? Because I was asking, regardless of where somebody is located in the U.S., of, do you think the people that you serve realize that those resources are available to them, right? But in a place where there are so many of them available, but then, like like you said, it's almost like an overnight pop up because you got funding. Okay, then the funding's gone, and then there's bad players in the field. How do they know where to go, or how to trust? How do you build that relationship with those people?
That's a good question. So, just anecdotally, if I were to ask you, if you were to unfortunately fall into the situation, you were to look for addiction treatment, where might you look?
I would Google online.
And that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, first step is just Google it, that's what the common person thinks is I need to Google it. I need to figure out where to go because if they have really good Google reviews, if I'm looking at this, if I can look into their program, it looks like a nice facility, their website isn't too wonky, then I'll probably pick that place. But just like marketing in other areas, word of mouth is huge. So if you know somebody that went to a treatment program and they had a good experience, even if the Google's reviews weren't that great, even if their website was a little wonky, you might give that place a lot more credit because you have a friend that had a good experience there. So if you know people in recovery that are looking for treatment, had a good experience, that's probably a good reference. If you had Google reviews, take that with a grain of salt. You want to look at it, look at the negative reviews, look at the positive reviews, look for trends. And if you're calling through to them, don't be shy. Ask them about it. Say, hey, I hear you guys had really long lines for your medications and it took 3 hours to get those and half the day was gone. And then you had to get in line for medications again. Have you guys fixed that since a year ago? What's been going on with that? Because I just don't want to be waiting in line for medications my whole stay. And then they'll answer you. And hopefully your BS meter can go off and you can say, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds a little off. Or you could say, oh, it sounds like they've made some real changes and things
Right.
are looking good there. So call, ask your questions, be thorough, but also lean a lot on that friendship referral. As long as you trust the person and if it doesn't feel like it's something dirty.
Yeah. Of course. It's so I'm gonna ask you the hard question. Of always ask based on your personal experience, your professional experience, and everything that you're doing now. I mean, you've lived in several different places, especially they were highly, at risk of being, targeted for the addiction is high at those rates, right? In those areas. Um, what is something that you think is a long term solution for those people who are obviously addicted now, right? But they're trying to figure out, well, how do I even get into recovery?
Mm. So the question is if they're
What's a long term solution for somebody that realizes that they need recovery?
my first thought, I want to make
Yeah,
sure I answer this right, but
go
my
for it.
first thought is to get into treatment. But this sounds like it's going to be a bit more complex than that. The first thought that I have is when you're going through an addiction and you have the thought, I need to change this. Something needs to be different in my life. I can't go through this anymore. The big test for addiction and the big question that we all ask is, have you ever wondered yourself, or has everyone that you cared about, anyone that you cared about, ever said that you may have a problem with drugs or alcohol? And if the answer to that is yes, likelihood is extremely high that you need treatment. So, first clue, when you get into treatment, take it seriously. Get close to people that you care about or that you think care about you. Develop relationships in the program, but focus on how to better yourself in the way of how is my thinking going to be different? How am I going to plan for what's going to happen after I leave? When I say better yourself, I don't mean that anything is wrong or anything is bad to begin with. I think that people are perfect as they are. But as you're in the program, something needs to change that fixes what was happening that was dysfunctional on the outside. Meaning, if you have, let's say, a family dynamic at home and things were going wrong, you were arguing with your wife, things tended to get escalated and it triggered the addiction, I would highly recommend that you do family therapy or couples therapy while you're in this program. The gloriousness of being in here in a program that's an inpatient is you get to be in a bubble for a little bit and you're in a protected environment where you shouldn't just be able to run out and grab the bottle. You shouldn't be able to call your dealer and make things happen quickly like that. You're in a very protected environment. So to be able to be here in a safe place, in a room with a therapist, and call up your wife, call up someone that you were struggling with on the outside and bring them in is a huge help. because then you're planning for what happens after you leave. So a really good metaphor that I like to think about is when you come into a program like this, the reason why we're recommending the treatment and the length of stay that we do is because it's not meant to be you come here and you're automatically cured and then you go back. You come here and you get this high level of supervision where you have doctors and therapists and nurses and people that you care about 24/7. And if you go back to the place that you were drinking and using without a plan or without more therapy or without any next steps, your odds of relapse are really high. So my advice for someone that's going through addiction is find a good treatment program, get into treatment, take it seriously, and then in your plan, think about what's going to be different when you leave so that you can maintain that sobriety. It's think about it in terms of a marathon, not when you get out, what's going to stop right away, but think about the things that need to change within your family dynamics, where you're living, your friends, the medications that you may need to start taking, just mind, body, spirit. And that's your best bet for long term.
Great answer. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Chris. Well, if somebody wanted to follow you or Laguna, where would they go for that?
So me, I mean, they can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm not too active on other platforms, but Chris Cummins LMFT, I think is the name on LinkedIn. And then if you'd like to call Laguna Treatment Center, it's 615-375-3400. And that's the number for our call center to be able to reach us.
Fantastic. And that'll be in the description of the video or the show notes of the podcast if you're listening to the audio version. Chris, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and advice and
Worse.
your life story. Of course, I mean, this is something that you live with, and that's like those are the best people that can, I heard it earlier this week. It's like people with wounds listen to people with scars, and that's yeah, it's so true. Yeah, somebody that's been through the same situation you've been in and be able to like, here's how I got out of it. I can help you with my skills, and that's incredible to have that. So.
I love that. Completely agree. Thanks for having me, Ty.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for watching this. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find us as an audio podcast on any of the audio podcast platforms from Apple and iHeart, Amazon Music. If you're listening to this as an audio podcast, you can find us on YouTube. Search for Long Term, a podcast in recovery. The number one way that you can help us grow the show and to help the message reach the people that we want to hear it is by sharing this episode with someone. If you heard Chris say something here today, you're like, wow, that really impacted me, and I know exactly who needs to hear this message so that they can get the help or encouragement that they need. Share this episode with them. The worst that it can happen is that they won't listen to it. The best that can happen is that it saves a life. And so I appreciate you tuning into these episodes, each and every time. But yeah, we've accumulated over 20,000 listeners per month, and it's incredible this amount of growth and information and interest that we had. I thought initially it was just going to be me learning about this on my own, that maybe not too many people were interested, but it turns out there are a lot of people that are affected by addiction and just want to know what to expect and how do we all benefit from this. And so I truly appreciate all of you for learning along with me and for interacting with Long Term and keeping us going. So with that said, I will see you in the next episode.